And one of the things that keeps popping up from time to time, seems to be more regularly than it should, actual racecourse errors. So racecourses have announced one horse is the winner, and it's transpired that it's not. Racecourse bookmakers have paid out over both results. And then it seems that punters appear to have double standards. If they expect a double result if the mistake's gone the other way, but very few, especially racecourse bookies, they won't return the money if they've been paid in error. Now, should racecourse bookmakers expect people to return the money in error, and if they actually know about a punter that has drawn, can they come to you and say, should they pay it back?
Okay, interesting question. I'm going to divert away from it and then come back to it.
Okay.
So it's not just racing. We get complaints about things like football matches where the whistle's blown early, and then the governing body of the Peruvian league has had to decide whether the official result stands or whether it doesn't. So there are errors in everything. In sports administration, there are errors, and they create disputes. And so in racing, you sometimes get wrong results called, and you get those identified at different times. So going back a few months, there was a situation where a BHA inquiry reversed an official result, a weighed-in result, because they accepted that the judge made an error, and we had 40 or 50 people writing saying, well, surely I should get paid now on that bet. And our position was, well, the rule is that payments made on the official result at the weigh-in, that was the official result at the weigh-in. You can't hold the bookmaker responsible for that mistake. So even though you've been very unlucky, there's a parallel group of people who've been equally lucky, and we can't say that you should now be paid. Maybe you could write to the people who got paid out luckily and ask if they'd send their winnings over to you. I don't know. But we can't go in and say there should be double payment. In situations where a result is corrected on the day, what happens with racecourse bookmakers is probably a Tattersalls committee issue. So I might send you back to a Tattersalls committee rather than looking at it ourselves. But I'm concerned about the way that those situations are sometimes dealt with. I'm surprised, first of all. I'm not a regular Twitter user. I don't delve into social media that often, but I sometimes do when a big incident's occurred or a notable incident occurred, and the degree of disgust that people have that they've not been paid on the incorrectly called winner, or they've had their money taken back, is disproportionate. It is an absolute disgrace that Company X hasn't paid me. They announced that. I had every reason to believe that I'd won, and they've taken the money back from my account. This is disgusting. Bookmaker X has paid both people, and you should too. And if you don't pay me out on the original announced winner, I'll never bet with you ever again. And that seems a bit over the top, but some of that is fueled by the way it's portrayed. And when these incidents happen on television, particularly terrestrial TV as opposed to specialist racing channels, the messages that sometimes come through are quite confused. So the last incident that I saw, and this is, I'm as you can tell, I'm no natural broadcaster, and I don't envy people who are in front of a camera live and having to talk about everything they see. But the last broadcast I saw where that occurred, the broadcaster said, bookmakers A, B and C have said they're going to pay on both results, good on them, and let's hope that others follow. And then paused and said, and of course we have sympathy for the on-course bookmakers, many of whom have ended up having to pay out on both outcomes. And you look at those two statements side by side, and that creates a mixed message. Is it right for the off-course bookmakers to have had to pay on both results, but wrong for the on-course bookmakers to have paid on both? Surely one is right or the other, or you praise the generosity, if you want to, of the companies who paid out on both, but recognise that they didn't have to do it. But if you say those things in the way they're said, that does contribute to the growing public view that companies aren't doing it as a goodwill gesture, they're doing it because they're obliged to do it, and that in turn creates more unhappiness down the line. And I've said to various people in various operators that from our perspective, it's much more important to provide people with good, clear, knowledgeable customer service, people who understand the bet, can empathise with a punter and talk to them about it clearly and with authority, than it is to do occasional goodwill gestures. that might cost the company the same amount of money, because if you do that, there's an expectation built up that they'll do it next time as well, and then when they don't do it next time, that becomes a dispute that comes to IBAS. So somebody will say, last time they called 2 results, my bookmaker paid me, and they're not doing it this time, and that's not fair, and I want payment on it. And I think sometimes these so-called goodwill gestures actually end up creating more future problems than they solve.
Yeah, the culture of justice payments. Now, one of the things recently, I mean, the whole backbone of the bookmaking industry is trust. You have your bet, the bet wins, the bookmaker pays.
Yep.
Bet bright, what's happened there surely is something that just cannot be accepted as a legitimate way to fold up a bookmaker's business. I mean, what are your opinions on that? And can punters that maybe had anti-post bets that would have won come to you and, you know, try and sort something out there? What is your opinion on that? Because I'm furious about it.
Well, it's difficult because some of those cases are live, and our position has always been not to talk about live disputes. It's also complicated because this has been looked at by the industry regulators, and they've made their position clear that they believe, on the balance of the evidence they've seen, that the company has taken a course of action that was, I think they described as being the best one available. I haven't seen that evidence, and our powers as an ADR body to request that evidence are less than the regulators would be. So I suspect I won't be privy to some of the things that have been seen already. I suspect what will happen is that we will have to decide that we can't look at those disputes, because if something has been considered by a regulator, we are below the regulator, but below the Gambling Commission in the hierarchy of decision making, with probably the courts at the top. So it's probably that if anybody wants to challenge that outcome, they'll end up having to take it to court. That's an option that's always open to every punter. If they don't like an IBAS decision, by the way, that people can always go to court. What has changed, though, that might be significant, is that in the 2015 Consumer Rights Act, measures were introduced that allowed people to combine together to bring legal action collectively, a class action, as they call it in America. So it might be that people who feel they've been treated unfairly in the way that company has voided bets that were looking to be in promising positions, could maybe look at working together to see and seek legal advice on whether that's something they could challenge collectively. I agree with you that that voiding open bets damages trust in the industry. In most cases, as most people will know, if a company surrenders its gambling license, they do it because they run out of money, and then there's not a great deal that anyone can do for anyone. But other companies have handled it better, and you know, I'm not saying this just to promote them, but some bets closed down last year. They had a 6-month winding down period. They allowed every bet that was settled in that period to be settled, and any that wasn't, they offered a cash out value for. And we had very few complaints. We had one complaint from somebody who had backed Donald Trump to win the US election and the US to declare war on Mexico, and he said that as that bet had half won, he should be paid half his winnings at the price of 100 to 1, and we didn't necessarily agree with that point of view. But the company offered him a cash out value that was, in our view, very generous, 3 times the price of Trump winning the election. And there is a better and a worse way to wind up an online bookmaking business. But I should say again that the Gambling Commission looked at this and they've seen things that I haven't seen. So I can only take on trust that they've seen what they need to see to reach a decision that the company has acted in the way they have was a reasonable thing to do.
Okay. What would you describe as the most frustrating part of your job?
That's difficult. I give a different answer to that all the time. I think there are 2 things I'd say, different types of things. The first is when we are misportrayed by people who either intentionally or accidentally misportray how we work. I've read articles written about the IBAS service in some publications which have referred to the way we go about doing our work that just aren't true, or referred to cases that I don't know about. And those people haven't ever come to us to say, can we ask about a particular case? They haven't asked for any background information from us. And that's frustrating, because I think what we're here to do is to provide an alternative to court action, an informed, free of charge service that people aren't obliged to use, but saves them the cost and hassle of going to court. And I think the service we offer is pretty good, and I think we've generated lots of positive outcomes for thousands of contented punters who've complained to us. So when someone wants to be critical of what we've done, I think they need to be critical about a specific thing. If they're just generally critical, I think that's unfair. So I think that's frustrating. And the other thing that I find frustrating is when you've gone into bat for someone who's come to you, who's made what just reads like a really plausible case, and you've gone through the process, you've asked the company lots of questions because this person's made a particularly good point, and you're saying to the company, yes, but I'm going to dig deeper on that. And then something emerges at the end and they come back and say, oh, by the way, I didn't tell you that. And you think that you've wasted a lot of time on somebody who knew from the start that there was no merit to their claim at all, but didn't disclose something that was vital, and you just wish you'd spent that time on someone else. People phone this office all the time saying, when's my dispute going to be done? And most get done in a pretty sharp time scale, but the ones that are more complex can take quite a long time. And if you waste some of that time on a case that really, when you see it had no merit at all, you think that's just a shame that someone else has had to get less of our attention to help that person who didn't deserve it.
Now, one of the things I was very surprised about when I did my research is that your findings are binding for operators up to £10,000, but non-binding for customers.
Yes.
Now, surely, but that's unfair for starters, and also wouldn't it give a no lose sort of carte blanche, green light to the rhino skin punters that might try it on?
Well, it's the law, so there's no escaping from it. It's the law at the moment anyway, because it's an EU law. So the European Directive on Alternative Dispute Resolution came into force in 2015, and it was introduced into British Parliament at the same time. And you can read those the ADR regulations. They're available. If you Google them, you can see what we're meant to do and how we're meant to do it. But every dispute resolution service in every European Union member state is adjudicating to the same broad standards, and they are that your decision is binding on the company but not on the consumer. Now, the Gambling Commission has added a bit of a nuance to that in putting this £10,000 upper limit on the company, and that reflects the financial thresholds of where a county court decision would possibly progress to a high court decision. So if we find against a company up to £10,000, that's the equivalent to a county court outcome. That is binding on the company. But if the value of what we're awarding a customer exceeds that, the Gambling Commission believes, and we agree, that the company should say, well, this case needs to be tested at a higher court. The authorities, or the evidence needs to be heard in greater depth. And we don't offer that service. Everything we do is conducted in writing. We would accept video evidence and things like that, but everything we do is done through email exchange and in the written word. So if there's a case that justifies a face-to-face hearing, and sometimes these are lower value cases too, where the company says that happened and the individual says that happened, and there's no substantial evidence to say which one's telling the truth, you might say to them, well, this is a case that really needs court attention, and we think anything that has a value over £10,000 could theoretically need that court time and need cross-examination of the two parties.
Okay, finally, as a footnote, is there anything that you would like to see improved, changed, to make your job easier?
Well, not necessarily to make the job easier. I think the Gambling Commission is currently reviewing the number of dispute resolution services there are that offer gambling adjudication, and there's an argument for saying that there are more than there need to be, and that can possibly be either confusing for customers or allow companies to shop around and find the one they think best suits their needs. So I think that would be interesting to see the outcome of that work and see whether there are fewer in the future. I think that would be good if there were. If I had to give a list of the things I would like to see the industry do different, it would be a list I'd never stop running through, and punters will always be punters. You know, there are more conscientious ones, less conscientious ones. We see them all. In the end, betting and gambling is about two people trying to win money off each other, and for that reason there'll always be people who don't tell you the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Brilliant. Richard Hayler, thank you very much.
Thank you.